Welcome to the Skin Deep Media Podcast. I'm your host, J Rod. And before we get started, I'm going to give you a little backstory. For the past year, I have served on the African American Male Advisory Committee for Seattle Public Schools that reports to the superintendent. We were tasked with coming up with recommendations to present to the superintendent in regards to the achievement gap between African American male students and the rest of the school district population. During this endeavor, I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Larry Nyland, Superintendent of Seattle Public Schools, on several occasions. He granted me this interview, which was supposed to be short, but it wound up being about an hour, and I broke it up into 4 different segments. This first segment deals with the teacher strike, the budget shortfall, which is around $74 million, and the challenges going forward for Seattle Public Schools. I hope you find it enjoyable and insightful. You can send all your comments to skindeepmedia@outlook.com, and stay tuned for part 2, 3, and 4 coming shortly. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. This is Rodney Jones, and today I have the special honor of speaking with the superintendent of Seattle Public Schools, Dr. Larry Nyland. Mr. Nyland was selected to lead the school district. They brought him out of retirement, actually, as a stabilizing force, and he stepped into what I would say a quagmire, but he's handling it well, and he's doing his best, not just for one particular group of students, but for all students, with a serious emphasis on helping minority students. And one thing I found interesting when I was doing some research on Mr. Nyland, he has a personal mission statement of bringing people together to do whatever it takes to improve student success. And I feel that says it all, but I'm gonna have Mr. Nyland elaborate on that. And once again, thank you for taking this time.
Delighted. Good to talk with you today.
Okay. So can you elaborate on that statement?
Yes. My career has been in districts that have been quite diverse. And so trying to figure out how you lead across differences. And I love that phrase, reach across the aisle. How do we work together for the benefit of all of our kids? How do we find out what works, and then how do we do more of that? So it's kind of leading from the middle, if you will, trying to listen to student voices, parent voices, teacher voices, school board voices, and pulling all that together. I guess also call it network weaving. It's kind of like weaving it together and taking all those different strands and making something, hopefully, of beauty and success out of it.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So what really made me want to talk to you was basically for the first time, I don't know in how many years or maybe in history, the teachers went on strike. And that was a very difficult time for everybody. And I know the whole nation was looking at the outcome of this. And I thought it was going to go a lot longer. I thought the teachers had finally decided, hey, we're going to unify and stand together. And it lasted 4 days, and they felt that they were successful. Do you feel that, not choosing sides or picking sides, do you feel that it was a win-win for everybody?
That's, yes. Strikes are always challenging. Strikes happen for a reason when you can't quite get there in the amount of time or money that you have available. So they, I guess, serve a useful purpose. And our goal through that time was to make sure that, again, we were reaching across the aisle, listening to people, trying to figure out what the common interests were so that we could work together both in getting a settlement and then, as importantly, working together after there was a settlement and after we went back to work. And I've been very pleased with the work that we've done, I think before the strike, but after the strike as well, as we've come together to work on this issue of closing gaps for all of the students.
Okay. With that being said, you're facing what I believe is a $74 million budget shortfall.
Correct.
And I know that the other day you was called to the governor's office, and I'm not going to answer anything about that because I know whatever is going to be public when it's going to be public. But what do you see happening as far as addressing the shortfalls? Do you think there's going to be teachers laid off, or can you talk about that? Or?
We're in the middle of that planning now, and so I think about it at three levels. One is how do we continue to work with the legislature to do a difficult job of finding money for, quote unquote, our paramount duty, educating students in Washington. Second, how do we keep channels of communication open during a challenging time for parents, for students, for teachers, for all of the participants? And then third, and it kind of depends on what day it is, which one is most important, but third, how do we do that? How do we cut 10% out of a budget and continue to do good work and close gaps for students? And so the school board has had probably a dozen meetings trying to go piece by piece by piece to figure out how can we make those cuts and still keep the most impact possible for students. And so I appreciate the work that staff has done. I appreciate the work that the school board has done to keep that focus on teaching, learning, and closing gaps.
I know a few educators. You are a career educator, and I commend you for that because that means that you are a helper and care about other people's well-being. With that being said, do you feel that teachers are compensated fairly and treated fairly in regards to their impact on children?
Well, I think that is one of the huge challenges that we face in Washington. When I started my career in education, teachers in Washington were number 4 in the nation. Today they're number 23 in the nation, and that's counting all of the money that local school districts put in addition to what the state puts in. If you count only the state money, and that's what our law in Washington says, is that 100% of basic education is supposed to be funded by the state, we would be 49th in the nation. We would be paying our teachers at the rate of South Dakota. But because we have local districts that have used their levy to add to compensation, add to what the state gives us for compensation, we're 23rd. And Seattle is not the most expensive. It is not the highest paid teachers in the state. We're close. We're number 5 in the state. And I believe that that's very appropriate. We live and work in King County. King County is one of the most successful, high-paid, and expensive places to live in the nation, and we need to take care of our teachers, and we want to attract high-quality teachers, and in order to do that, we need to pay a competitive wage. So, yeah, I think that and that's really what the strike was about, is how can we manage the best we can with limited resources to pay teachers fairly for the job that we ask them to do.
Okay, now, I'm not trying to come off as just being crawl from under a rock when I ask this question. This is a rich city. You have Microsoft, Nintendo, Boeing, whoever. And I'm asking you this question because I truly don't understand. How can Seattle Public Schools engage with these mega corporations for funds? How can they assist, or is it illegal, or what? Why is the burden? I remember when I was growing up, my parents were always having a discussion about voting or not voting for the levy. When you attach something to people's property taxes, they usually don't want to go for that.
Right.
So what is the process, or is there a process of solicitation for outside funds?
Well, Seattle is, it doesn't feel like it, but Seattle truly is blessed from an educational standpoint. Our levy is a little bit higher than almost everybody in the state. We get to vote for taxes on tall buildings, and so we also have expensive houses. But our cost of taxation in Seattle is far less, and it generates more money for students, so that's good. The city is to die for. No other city in the state of Washington is contiguous, has the same boundaries for both the city and the school district. And that means that the city, under Norm Rice, and renewed several times since then, votes additional taxes that come through the city and allow us to put even more money into schools. And then we have the preschool levy, and then we have the money that the mayor's just put in through the summit, and then we have about 300 community-based organizations that put money into Seattle. So all of that put together all makes a difference, matters a lot, and it helps explain why Seattle outperforms our peers in the state and nationwide. So all of that helps. Generally, if you go to a foundation or a corporation, you're going to get grants. You feel like you've done a really good job if you get a grant in the range of $1 million, $2 million, maybe $5 million. And all of that is useful and helpful, but out of a $750 million budget, it doesn't go very far to replacing, in our case, a $74 million gap.
Right.
So, yeah, the city has stepped up, National Foundation has stepped up, Satterberg Foundation has stepped up, Chris Larson has stepped up. We just have an awful lot of people that are out there doing good things for kids, and we appreciate it.
So you're saying that, or maybe you're not saying, by the beginning of the next school year, this gap will be a little smaller.
We're still facing the $74 million. So when we find grants, most people, baby boomers and everybody else, wants to know that their money is making an impact. And so they want to fund things that have a specific purpose, as opposed to we want to pay for teacher salaries, or we want to pay for one more teacher in a building, or we want to pay for the heat bill, or so. I mean, that's kind of the $74 million is the meat and potatoes,
right.
Keep the doors open, and the funding sources are, they're all in around the closing the opportunity gap, and so they're helping us with tutoring, they're helping us with after-school programs. Not so much around the day-to-day, keep the doors open kind of things.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of my interview on the Skin Deep Media podcast with Dr. Larry Nyland, Superintendent for Seattle Public Schools. I hope you gather some insight into some of the challenges faced by the districts and his thoughts on the past strike, and are the teachers in Seattle Public Schools compensated fairly. Part 2 will focus more on the challenges faced by the district going forward and possible remedies. Send all questions and comments to skindeepmedia@outlook.com. Thank you.